without further ado, let me quickly show you the flagship product, which is Blocksize Core. And what you can see here by now is Blocksize Matrix which is a correlating or corresponding front end for Blocksize Core, right? So this is a standard dashboard that you're using to basically visualize your recent positions, recent crypto assets. You're able to switch dedicated positions in particular. And by the way, we will be afterwards able to answer a few questions, not only to my side, but also to Philip and Christian. I think we will have a couple of minutes left, so I'll make it a quick wrap up. But yeah, so what you can see here is also several kind of charting opportunities that you can customize in your favor, right? In addition to that, you find several other relevant charting options, so for instance, like the standard candlesticks, nothing that is too exciting that you haven't seen already in market overview, and especially interesting right now, the heat map, visualizing that a bit, especially Bitcoin cash right now is under pressure due to the recent halving yesterday, right? So there's an interesting setup that you can directly see here. And there's furthermore statistics, but that is not too important right now. Let's quickly have a look at the market, because that's what we're keen to see right now, all right? So first of all, starting within the portfolio overview, and as we said in the beginning, what we have in a lack of infrastructure is not only a lack of infrastructure in terms of interfaces, not only the interfaces that are missing, for instance, the banking standard interfaces when it comes to FIX are not given, usually at least. We have additional problems, especially when it comes problems in the markets or hurdles in the market when it comes to institutional adoption, especially when it comes to the layer of having an homogeneous infrastructure, right? So because each and every provider got its own data format, unique data formats, which deviate a lot. This is true on the position side, this is true on the trading side, and this is obviously also true on the custodian side of business, right? So what we did is we established an overall holistic view of your crypto assets portfolio, which is for the asset management side, an NAV view, which is nothing else than a net asset value proposition, right, or net asset value calculation. And on your personal side, you're able to link in your dedicated wallets, which could be your paper wallet under your pillow, but it could also be your HSM-based wallet in a secure crypto asset storage, right? And by here, you're having an overall visualization of your total holdings. You're able to select the reporting currency, which is right now in euro, as you can see here, and several crypto dedicated positions are aggregated on the left-hand side, as you can see here on the pie chart. And you're able to drill down the dedicated positions. For instance, what we can see here in our demo portfolio is that you have dedicated Ether positions and dedicated several wallets, which are combined in this overview, right? So you can see the visualizations on by our remote Zoom session, and in particular, you're able to add dedicated wallets. So the idea is to bring in your own wallets on one hand side, and also having basically one touch point for your treasury or cash management, position management, right? So that's the core idea, assembling all the crypto assets into one particular place, in one holistic place, which enables you to have the reporting. When it comes to post-trade reporting, bear with me a second, I will be there in a couple of minutes. But first of all, we deep dive into the market side, right? Market depth, to be precise. For instance, we haven't only visualized the standard order books. That is, this is not rocket science, right? But what we have done in particular is aggregated order books, or what we call it, layered order books. So, the reason for that is simple, because we used to assemble them anyway. We use them for smart order routing. So what we did is basically aggregate several, in this particular case, 4 exchange order books for Bitcoin, Bitcoin as a base currency and Euro as spot currency, that you find in one chart visualized here. So what you can see in particular is not only, once we zoom in, you see a dedicated overlap, not too much right now, but you see a dedicated overlap as you can see here, which is in particular your spreads, right? The spreads over inter-exchange spot prices that can be used for arbitrage, right? So this is your arbitrage opportunity right now, as you can see here. There's several other exchanges and pairs available. You're flexible on your choice here, and you see the recent positions in a holistic overview, which is also aggregated on the left-hand side, and you see some calculations on the lower right side. You find, for instance, statistics like the highest bid, the lowest ask, which is basically a global aggregated overview, which leads us to the use case, which is obviously utilizing that for two things. For one, you will be able to have a marketplace or market making in particular. But what is even more interesting for us is enabling institutional players like our connected partners. And we mentioned in the beginning, partners like Avalok, Logics, for instance, or trading technologies, to bring in an aggregated smart order router view. And I can show you that to you in a second. So imagine you're a buy-side asset manager having an accumulated demand right now for, let's say, about 300 Bitcoin, and your core currency would be euro, since your settlement would be in euro, and you would be, in particular, your settlement instructions would be on the euro side. You have usually a bank wire, which is in the Swift parameter, right, on the banking side, and you're able to simulate, for instance, in this particular case, this order. So you're able or free to switch this. Since it's a demo, of course, we will have the simulation mode obviously active, right? And we are able to execute a 300 Bitcoin order, and with real-time aggregated order books via our smart order router. You can also route it to dedicated exchanges, but obviously the usage and the more fun it is to having the aggregated way, right? And we're having a best way of the type. There are several order types available, but right now we're focusing on the market orders, right? So it's in buy order, as you can see here, and you're able to validate your order before you send it. And be advised, this is not the only opportunity to bring in trades. For instance, there's also another trading front end, which is enable you to bring in your API connected trades, right? Or trades via APIs. But let's execute it for now and have a look how the markets will look like in this particular case. And it's kind of interesting to see that it is not only executed in an immediate response time, which is usually below 100 milliseconds, but what you can see here is that the order is sliced accordingly, right? So we have the majority right now at Bitstamp. I have Coinbase in small slice within Kraken, and also Bitcoin got a major share of 1/5 of the overall order. And what you can see here, furthermore, is that you calculate an average execution price. This is in particular important if you compare that, especially comparing that to the volume-weighted average pricing, similar to MiFID II regulatory, MiFID and MiFID II post-trade performance, which is usually done within the standard benchmark KPI, which is called volume-weighted average pricing. So it's the same implementation on our side. Of course, we're not in the crypto asset side, not forced or enforced to having this side, but we're doing that anyway to bring in the transparency for the post-trade lifecycle. So what you can also see here is a unique order ID aggregating the 4 orders in this particular case, and you see a dedicated order status for each and every exchange. As you can see by now, we obviously connected a far more exchanges, but not all of them provide the Bitcoin Euro pair, right? It's usually 5 or 6, especially for Bitcoin Euro. A bit more broader market for US dollar or other cryptocurrencies in particular. And yeah, the order is usually executed in a sub-second or even below 100 milliseconds parameters, usually fast round trip times. We are actually able to propel the low latency infrastructure, or actually the low latency execution of the trades via the static routed private net, which is not a VPN, but it is actually a physically static routed net, which we are able to use within the perimeter of one of our trading partners, and which saves us about for the route London and New York, which takes about 20 milliseconds, which is doesn't sound a lot, but is basically, you know, the rat race of the HFTs, the high frequency traders, right? So this is in particular one of the unique advantages here. And yeah, of course, on the regulatory side, you are basically focusing on what is in for the savings side. If you would compare, this is important notice, right? If you would compare this trade to the most expensive price within the market, you would have saved almost 7% of the overall order, which is stated below here. So maybe you can see my mouse as I'm speaking here. So this is a dedicated saving in particular with regards to the most expensive exchange, right? So this is an advantage of the smart order routing. And usually the prices and the deviations vary a lot. And your calculation is basically deviating a lot, especially when it comes to the more liquid markets. But in comparison to the most expensive exchange, that's 7% in this particular case. Yeah, very interesting setup. And let's have a look about the next trading history, especially when it comes to the trading requirements and trading requirements in terms of trade blotters or the post-trade transparency. So if you are not only on the execution side and not an HFT or not a hedge fund, usually you have the brokerage setup or asset management setup, and you have to implement a dedicated trade history, or let's call it trade blotter, as the colleagues usually used to say, right? So what is implemented by here is that you can see a dedicated solution for bringing in the order and having a complete log over the last hundreds of orders. You're also able, which is even more important, to have dedicated PDF reports. It's a monthly report basis. You're able to download them here, right? And in addition to that, which is also kind of interesting, that you basically are able to bring in all the intraday reports and live basis within a dedicated parameter. By here, for instance, you're able to switch the date and then have a dedicated export in a CSV file, which is usually required for this our standard Excel, right? So this is basically the overall round trip. And when it comes to obviously several server statistics in this particular case, which are relevant, in addition to that, you can show dedicated metrics with regards to the connectivities of the order books. What we can say is that incorporating all the exchanges, and they're up to 70 are now connected on a technical level, and all of the order book updates would incorporate require processing of about 1 billion per day, order book updates per day, which are incorporated and processed and stored in our QueryDB in the long term, right? So this is as you can imagine, a major effort, and requires a lot of processing in the backend side. And this is speaking of the backend side, it would be interesting for you to understand how it looks like in this particular case. And yeah, basically to wrap up, it's I think a good idea to explain how the overall infrastructure working in this particular case, right? So on the left-hand side of this overall architecture, you can see financial institutions, which is your banking side, hedge fund side, or buy-side asset managers, connected via dedicated and unified API or a standard interface, which is nothing else than a computer-programmed interface, right? We also provide a REST-based interface, like state-of-the-art, and fixed-based gateway, which is divided into two parts. One is the market data gateway, and one is the execution fixed gateway, right? And this is the client-side parameter, which will be connected, for instance, to your banking parameter by, for instance, the standard core banking of the solutions of, for instance, QueryLogics or Avalok, right? Their core banking setup is connected, and you're able to connect via these multiplier. And within our parameter, you can see two further important things. That on the other end of the spectrum, we connected several liquidity providers like exchanges, dark pools, OTC desks, etc., and unify them with different data formats and different different APIs, which, for instance, contains also WebSockets, usually, but not often, or not necessarily, and connect them into a unified layer, which is called Blocksize Connect, right? And it's a fault-tolerant and completely cluster-based Kubernetes cluster, ensuring 99% uptime all over a year. Usually it's better, but that's guaranteed by our SLAs. And in the middle, of course, you can see the functionalities that I've shown during the last 10 minutes, right? The smart order routing in particular, the aggregation function, the market data, and some analysis features, right? So aggregate and layer order books, for instance, etc., etc. And yeah, that's basically the overall infrastructure. Of course, there will be kind of some questions in particular. So, but first of all, let me close this overall setup here with a dedicated, where can you find us, where can you contact us if that is of interest. Quickly jump through the Connect Us site. Basically, we are based in Frankfurt, Taunusanlage, very central. Also a small outpost in Singapore. And you can obviously drop us a note here, or as also written down in the chat, what you can see here is our standard info, if it's Blocksize capital address. And yeah, obviously feel free to drop us a note. After our session, I will also paste in the LinkedIn account links within the chat feature. So you feel free to define us on LinkedIn, post us on LinkedIn. And yeah, so that's it basically from my side. Feel free to, if we have the time left, we can bring in some questions, right? But that's basically it.